Okay, I guess we can start. We come to order, please, for those visitors. We're here. My name is Doug Coop. I'm chairman of the Finance and Audit Committee. We have a quorum. I don't think Alderman Davis will be here. He's had another meeting involving community development. Andrea Schutt may come, in which case she'll sit in for him. So we have a rather large agenda tonight. We have 18 items of new business, 3 items of old business, and a finance update. So hopefully we can move along. I'd like to move a couple things out of order to take advantage of Mayor Noble's presence here. And we'd like to discuss 2 items that I think you can help us with, Steve: the city bus merger and also the volunteer firemen's museum. Why don't we go with the firemen's museum first, or take your pick?
Yeah, no, I mean, we do Fireman's Museum first. I think hopefully you all had an opportunity to see the communication. I know some members of the Volunteer Firemen's Museum came and spoke last month, but I included as part of the communication, which may, I think, be in your printed packets, a copy of the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, which was the $10 million grant that we received. Part of that process identified work that needed to be done at the Volunteer Firemen's Museum, or the former Wiltwyck Fire Station. That work totaled a little over $1 million. An outline of that is in our approved plan. We had a cost engineer do that estimate for us. They went and visited the museum with some of the volunteers and our city staff. At this point, we're proposing to all of you to bond $560,000 to make what we believe are the most critical repairs, which is to replace the roof, to do some masonry work, and be able to make sure that the rafters and all of the structure in the attic and for the roof are stable and secure. And so that is our request. And again, we did talk about it last month, but this is now the formal request. So what we're asking for is a bond of $560,000 to be able to start that work. I've worked with John, our city engineer, to prepare a request for proposals to hire an architecture/engineering firm to put together that scope of work for us and those design drawings, and that would be included as part of the $560,000. And then we would go out to bid, and our hope would be that the timing of all of this would allow us to bid the project before the end of this year and potentially start construction on it before the snow flies next winter.
Are you looking for approval of the bond request tonight? Or?
If the council so chooses, then we can, John can help us with a committee report, but we just wanted to, I know we've talked about it a bit, but I wanted to see if you had any other further formal questions, or if that's something that the council is supportive of.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly like to move on this. We've been talking about this for I don't know how many years. The longer it sits, the worse the situation's going to be. I think there's some areas of the museum that, are dangerous right now. I would certainly like to see us address that. And, this is a building we can't afford to lose in our community. Very great historic value, provides a good service to our community. I'd like to see us take action tonight.
The bond is for $560,000. Is that the total cost, or?
So that is the total cost of what we are considering phase 1, which is the roof work, the work in the attic, as well as the masonry repairs that will kind of keep the building secure, no more leaks, and so that the actual structure will be here for many, many more years to come. There are an additional almost $500,000 worth of work that was proposed as part of the DRI. We're not proposing for us to do that work right now, but our grant team is going to be on the lookout for future grants that would fit the rest of the repairs, so that we would be able to secure funding. We hope
we
to do
may
that.
be looking at another 500,000 at a later date.
Yes.
A year, 2 years?
Yeah, and so, the work, the rest of the work proposed was everything from, window improvements, and again, some of that will be done with the 560,000, but HVAC, interior repairs, again, there has been a lot of water damage in the building, so that was identified. Again, a whole host of other improvements, and again, it's outlined in the DRI plan, but we feel like we want to take care of the critical features first, and then the cosmetic features and some of the kind of quality of life issues like heating can be achieved with additional grant funds and additional fundraising on behalf of the museum over the course of the next couple of years.
Any other comments?
Just that this is an incredible asset, and I think we should go forward with the bonding.
Any comments from the firemen's and museum people? We heard you last, so any brief comments?
Any brief comment? Well, the comments are brief, yes. At the last meeting, as the mayor just talked about, we did talk about what needed to be done. But one of the things I want to kind of go over is how important this is. One of the things, the kinds of things that getting all of this work done will allow us to do. The Smithsonian Museum has artifacts from the Kingston Fire Department. We would dearly love to be able to borrow them. We wouldn't be able to get them, but we'd be able to borrow them. But because of the leaks, because of the damage, because of the HVAC issues, we can't do it. We just don't even bother to try. I mentioned the Smithsonian because that's the epitome, all the way down to the Firemen's Museum in Hudson, which has a number of artifacts, including a parade wagon from Kingston. We'd love to be able to get some of those. So there are various assorted places that we could get the artifacts to for exhibit on loan that we can't now simply because of the structure.
Mm-hmm.
Was it, you told me 50 we got 50 things in the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Badges, we purchased a uniform from Weiner Hose. Weiner Hose, their firehouse was, you get on the end of the ramp down onto Delaware Avenue, and it's across the street. Yeah. So,
Okay. Well,
Asbury Avenue, sorry.
I sense we have support here,
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
you let us vote on it. We can-
No, that's fine. I just want to impress that,
Okay, we
what we're
appreciate
doing is
your
important.
attendance here at the last couple of meetings.
Can I ask Bill a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill, once you get the $560,000 and you do the major repairs you need to do, is there any, since that'll be done, right? Is there any way you can acquire monies now that the building is sturdy and a capable museum? Is there any way you can is there any way you can now go and look for money
Well, number one.
to do the rest of the work?
Number one, we don't own the building. The city of Kingston owns the building. So any of the funding for that has to come through the city of Kingston. Now, having said that, we're more than willing to go hunting from where it is. We can put together whatever is necessary for going after to the state, to the Parks and Historic Places group, and because they've got supposedly a boatload of money that they can give for old buildings that need to be worked on. So the answer is we are not going to be able to get it, but we will certainly be willing to participate in that.
Okay, so
Now, having said that, we did get some.
We did get an anonymous grant for restoration work inside the building that we are using that money to repair the water damage that was inside the building, the plaster work from where the roof had leaked. And that kind of stuff right now, we have somebody who will come in and do that work for us. Now that the majority, last year when the roof was fixed, it stopped the leaks. When the roof drain broke and we had some damage done. So we have some of the money to do the
But
work
it's
inside
not-
the building.
It's not the 500,000, much less than.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I just want, I'm gonna defer to Kristen on this, I don't know if you can answer. Does the condition of the building have an impact on grants, no matter who's applying for the grants? Is that, or is it a moot point, the condition of the building?
Well, I think having some city investment into the building will make for a more competitive grant application, because we've said that the city has already invested X amount of dollars into the building. So that's part of the narrative in a grant application. As far, it really depends on what we're applying to do. And I don't know the project well enough yet to be able to speak to that.
Okay.
But, I mean, I also think that there could be a possibility, I don't know if this already exists, but if there was a friends group, like Friends of Forsyth Nature Park or Friends of the Museum, they could raise funds
Right.
and they donate to the city to help with the project costs. So that's something that, wouldn't necessarily take city staff time, that would help fund it.
Okay, the committee report, controller on behalf of the mayor, request bond authorization in the amount of $560,000 to fund improvements, i.e. metal roof, skylight, masonry, restoration, and window replacements at the Volunteer Firemen's Hall and Museum located at 265 Fair Street, Kingston, New York. Estimated financial impact $560,000.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
You're sitting in for Tony.
I guess I am, so.
Yeah, so you, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Thank you. Okay, if we could move to one piece of, it's actually on the old business part of the agenda, taking advantage of the mayor's presence, and that is the merger of
Can I sign in your
of
spot?
the county city bus systems was kicked back to committee, last week's finance committee. So I know you've addressed some questions with Alderman Davis. Are there any other questions? You could speak to it, Steve, if you like.
Sure. After it went back to committee, I got one question from Alderman Davis to date, and his question was related to whether or not bus service would still continue to Colonial Gardens and then into Colonial Gardens like it does today, and the answer to that question was yes. It will continue to serve the residents of Colonial Gardens as it does today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only question that I've gotten so far.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't get some from Bill?
Our office responded to a couple of questions with regard to the extent to which the city could control, bus routes and whether it was, suggestive or whether or not additional mandatory.
So we have some language that we've
Yeah, and
prepared.
I know Jim asked if this also to be on laws and rules, this one, so I think the language stuff is gonna be talked about there. The signature, we already talked about it.
I'm sorry, you're saying that this is also gonna go before laws and rules?
Yeah, Jim made that request.
Okay. Because I had some questions relating to the contract. Would that be more appropriate to talk to theirs? Bring it up now.
I think that I think what would be helpful for our team is that, if there are questions, suggestions to contract language and ideas, I know that July seems like a long ways away, but I think it's really important for us to recognize that to be able to effectively educate our residents and be able to have the county, to be able to have the resources they need to roll out this combined bus service, we want to be able to, get this done if we're going to do it, by the March council meeting. And so I would suggest that, if we have thoughts, suggestions, ideas, we should try to be working kind of off, of just at the committee meetings, so that if you have suggestions and thoughts, that we get it to the county, because we have to kind of negotiate with them some language. And so it'd just be, the sooner we have that, I think the sooner you all can then have final drafts to look at and then approve. And I'm just worried that, March, April, and May, and, we'd like to at least be able to give our residents, 6 to 8 weeks of an understanding of your routes are gonna be changing, if they are. The type of bus that's gonna be picking you up may be changing, the fare structure is going to be changing, to free, which is a good way for it to change. But, it's in all of that, we do need some time, and that's why we started early, but I do just hope that we can try to get, if we can get all of the aldermen to provide their comments and suggestions, to us, and, either to my office or to Corporation Counsel's office, we can then get, with the county, on some of this stuff.
And specific questions about the contract, you should contact our office, make an appointment with Kevin, because Kevin's ultimately going to be the one who's, negotiating the contract terms, and that's something that should be done more in confidence than in a public meeting anyway.
Well, I think a more general question was, there was concern expressed by some folks about the ability of the city to influence routes and service in the future. My reading of the contract says we are clearly involved in that in the future, and that the county has to come to the city, and both would then talk to folks who were affected. Is that your understanding? How clearly is this relationship delineated as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, and so, we think it's in the contract, but what Kevin and, discussed with the kind of the, when Bill Carrier approached him about seeing if that language could be changed or slightly updated, Kevin sent something to the county that basically indicated that, if it, similar process as to subdivision A, where it talks about that, will be pursued upon the city's request in the event that the city determines adjustments need to be made to address the needs of its residents. Also, that upon such request, the county and city shall work together to assess and resolve any outstanding issues. Just to kind of basically say that, we recognize that there are constituents that are going to be served by this bus system, but those constituents are also the county's constituents, because the county represents all of us. And so, we, I think as aldermen have in the mayor's office, that we have an opportunity to advocate on behalf of our constituents, and I think that the contract allows for that. And I think it also indicates that the county is going to listen to us. And again, there may be reasons why we can't change a route, or or shouldn't change a route. And I think what the county has done with their routes, and why it's taken 3 years for us to get to this point with them, is that they actually paid really good consultants to look at all of our routes, to survey our bus passengers, to do bus counts of where people are coming from, and really do a study so that the science behind where our bus stops go is real. And I think that the Ulster County has really tried to have a science-based approach, and not necessarily have an approach where the one constituent that calls the most gets a bus stop in front of their house, and then we do that for 20 years. We then have random bus stops all over the place that no one rides on anymore because that constituent moved 5 years ago. And so I think it's, that's why we want to be able to kind of have it be based on science. But again, constituent feedback is really important too. And I think that the contract does allow us to still have that say. But I think one of the things that we also have recognized is that this is all managed by, the Federal Highway Transit folks. And any change in a route requires a mandatory public hearing, and it requires public input, and it requires, official meetings. And just like now, if we were to change routes or change fares, we have to have the same process here in the city, and that's something that we've had to follow too. So like we also can't just decide, as aldermen, you can't just decide, I want to change the route and I want it to go over here. Like there has to be a public process, and there has to be an approval process through the FTA to be able to, get these routes changed and updated.
Well, do you know the last time our routes were changed and updated?
There have been 2 or 3 different studies done saying that the city should change their routes, and we've always usually just disregarded the studies that the county has done. So the counties are all of the studies that the county have done are on their website, and so I think that the first study was done in 2006, and then another one in early 2000s, and then this most recent transit integration. And all of the studies have generally said the same thing, that our routes do need to be tweaked to be able to be the best routes that we can have. And we just have never gotten around to doing the tweaking, mostly because of staffing limitations and cost limitations, and the city just hasn't wanted to put that extra money into the bus system
So the routes haven't changed since the early 2000s at all?
Pretty much, they're pretty much the way they have been. Yeah.
Dan, help me with this. Now, this is going to be discussed in laws and rules, too, particularly on the root structure, as Andrea just said. But what do we need to do? This was sent back to committee. Do we need a whole new committee report to bring this back onto the floor, or?
I don't believe so. I think that you will need to articulate your questions. You need to bring them to Steve. You need to bring them to Kevin so that they are addressed in the context of the contract negotiation. We can't address, questions with regard to the language of the contract, on the floor of the council. It has to be brought to us. We have to look into it. There has to be discussion with the county, and it has to be addressed.
Well, would it be, seeing this, we're discussing this now in finance, and it will be discussed in laws and rules, and we want to take action on this in March, because we're talking about this in two committees. Can we have a special finance meeting prior to caucus where we can vote on this?
Well, ultimately, my assumption is that you're gonna have to approve whatever contract is entered into, and you're gonna have to approve the merger. But we don't get to that point until questions with regard to the language of the contract are articulated and addressed in negotiations. So the most important thing is if there are issues that any of you want to raise, take them to either Steve or our office so that we can start looking into it.
And there are two different sections of this, and I think that, we may have the ability to also separate them if need be, is that there is the resolution, which says that we're going to merge, and it says that, we're going to transfer our assets to the county come July 1st, and that really kind of sets what the FTA and the county needs to be able to put in front of their legislature. The second piece of it, and that's one piece, the second piece is also adopting a resolution authorizing me to sign this contract. And so there are, if in general everyone feels comfortable with the resolution and there are no changes to the resolution, the resolution can be adopted to show a sign that we are moving forward, but that we still want to just work out some of these details when it comes to the MOA. So that's another option that you could, look at, because I haven't heard anyone have any issues yet with the resolution, which is only a one.
Well, we did have a closed vote here in committee last
Yeah.
month, 3-2 vote, and we're having questions. I wonder if it's appropriate just to bring the whole thing back.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we could have two different resolutions. One is out of finance relating to the primary document, and then one out of laws and rules relating to the contract.
Mhm. Okay, and who's going to introduce these resolutions? Is this coming from your office?
Well, I already introduced one.
I'm
that
just
was-
trying to get
right,
the
so
mechanism to
There was
make
already
this
one that
happen.
was tabled. So in that committee report from the last time, what I think finance could do is decide whether or not, from a financial perspective, we're comfortable entering into an agreement that, we pay the county $225 a year, for the next 5 years with, I think, $112,000 this first half of the year. That would be one thing that you all could do as finance to then kind of do your part, and then allow laws and rules to have a closer look at, the non-financial pieces of this. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds
But
right.
what would happen if it passes through here and then doesn't pass through laws and rules? That means we're merged, but we don't have a contract.
And that's, I guess, the issue of sending it to two different committees. So I'm not in charge of the common council, so I just, I feel like if we have any other questions tonight, John is here as the finance comptroller. He may not be at laws and rules, and so I think if there are any financial questions related to the contract, we should probably ask those now, and then, you can take up any of the more procedural issues, and then,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ready?
Well, I guess we should finish that discussion first. I have a question about the finances, but.
Yeah.
So can we send it back to the common council without a vote tonight? Or do we have to take another vote because we sent it back here?
My understanding at this point is that the issues related to the contract will refer to your committee, and the issues related to the merger were sent to Laws and
The
Rules. Is that
email-
accurate? Or is it just
The other
one
way.
communication that was sent to both?
The email, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I think I sent it to everybody too. I guess nobody saw it. The email that Jim said finance will be talking about the financial aspects of it, and laws and rules will be discussing the agreement.
Contract.
So if either committee passes a resolution referring it back to the council, it gets back on the council. So it doesn't have to be both.
Okay.
But because we already have a resolution that was sent to the floor, we now have it back. Can we just loop it back, the same one?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's my question. Okay, all right. So we don't need to retake a vote on
We have to go to send it back.
it? Yeah. I mean, in this committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions, comments, whatever? Is that-
Well, questions about the finances,
Yeah,
but I don't, so, just to clarify, the contract stipulates the $112,000 this year, then $250,000 for the next 5 years, I think, and after that, we don't pay anything for the bus.
Correct.
Now, the $250,000, what is that covering?
So that is a commitment to the county that would go toward the operations, mostly long-term or capital costs related to improving our bus service. And so when we all signed on to the sales tax agreement, the caveat in the sales tax agreement was that we would work toward merging the two systems as long as there was no net impact to county taxpayers. And so the $225,000 each year for 5 years will allow the county to make the needed improvements to our city bus fleet, which includes adding Wi-Fi, adding the mobile app, and so putting like GPS locators on all of our buses so that their constituents can know where the bus is on their phone. Upgrading our fleet. Our fleet is very old, and most of the buses are over 10 years old and are at or near the end of their life expectancy, and so we'll need to have new buses, and so there's a local share that we've traditionally had to pay that the county would basically use our $225 to put toward purchasing new buses. And that's why it ends, because after 5 years, the fleet will have been upgraded, the county will be running efficiently, and the amount of costs related to the system will be covered by the state and federal aid that they expect to receive. And so they believe that that's why the cost would end to the city.
Steve?
Is the county able to, after we give them our annual payment, is there any way they can say, hey, sorry, that didn't cut the mustard, we need more?
I think that that's what the contracts are for. I think that generally most municipal entities don't break contracts. Generally doesn't look good and generally is illegal and generally, we've generally not something that county governments generally do.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my memory is a little hazy when we first started talking, but I thought they actually had the ability to say, it's costing us more, so we need more from you.
Yeah, no, that is not in there.
Okay.
The only thing that's in there in terms of a kind of that type of clause is that if we as a city 2 years from now decides, hey, this bus thing is working out really great, but we're not going to pay you anymore. They have the ability during the contract that if we don't cut a check to them, that they can take it from our sales tax. But again, we've always paid our bills in a timely manner.
Patrick?
Let me try to understand this, Steve and John. The reason we're paying the $225 is because we signed a sales tax agreement that included the bus, maybe a bus merger, and that there would be no net impact to the county for that, and that's why we have to pay them the $225. Is that an agreement that we made previously?
The 225, no. The 225 is to fund the county taking over and integrating the city's transit services from an operating and capital standpoint into their operation. The city runs the city bus operation at a deficit. at a deficit. So over time, over the 5-year period, it allows the county to make improvements, to bring the system into their fold, and to create efficiencies there, and get it to the point where, you know, this 225 a year will help mitigate losses on the county side. Keep in mind, if we didn't integrate our system with the county system, we would be incurring losses in our budget.
Do you have an idea what those losses have been in the past?
You know, with direct and indirect costs, you're in the neighborhood of $300,000 a year,
Okay.
Losses.
every year.
So this year we lose $300,000 and we pay 225, which would be
No.
525?
Now, once that's our budgetary loss, approximate budgetary loss with indirect and direct costs. Once this system goes over to the county, let's talk about 2020 first. That'd be easier conceptually.
Okay.
There is no more budgetary loss in the city, on the city books. It's just a 225 payment to the county
So
for
it's a
those
plus-
5 years.
You're saying
For
it's a plus 75
Right.
for us.
Right, approximately, right? There's some estimates in here. For this year, for 2019, basically the city bus would come off, the budget would, as of July 1st, would discontinue, right? So there would be savings there back into the city budget for the current operations, because it's budgeted at a loss. So you would discontinue a half year of loss for 2019, then you'd have to factor in a $112,000 payment. From a financial standpoint, from a budgetary standpoint, this merger, and I won't speak to the operational side, but from a budgetary and financial standpoint, there's significant long-term savings for the city.
You good?
I'm
What
thinking. I'm
happens-
thinking.
Can I jump in?
Go ahead.
All right. What happens to the old buses?
Yeah, so buses that still have what is considered life expectancy on them, so the Federal Transit Administration has a certain number of years that each bus is supposed to be in service, generally speaking, so many of our buses are, 10 years is the general lifespan of them. Anything that has that life left on them is a federal asset. We don't own it, the feds do. Even though we think we have the registration and everything, but they own it. It's their money. They pay 90% in most instances or more of some of these buses. And so they have to then go to the county. And so those assets are the ones that you would be transferring. All of the assets that don't have any federal life left on them are ones that basically are older than their life expectancy. The feds don't want them anymore. The county doesn't want them because they're so old. We keep them. And so there are a trolley bus, one of those old historic trolleys that we still have running around once in a while, as well as
I see them dropping the kids off every
Yeah.
day at school.
Yeah, a couple of paratransit buses. So we would still be able to retain those because the county doesn't want them, the feds don't own them. We could then choose to repurpose them, provide them to Parks and Recreation to be able to provide bus service for their summer camp kids or for the school programs, or we could decide to surplus them, depending on, again, as buses get old, there are maintenance costs. So if we decide to keep them, then that's a financial commitment that we're making to other programs within the city.
How much do you receive, John, from in state aid or DOT aid for the buses? I'm trying to get a grip on the 225. How much do we take in? And is it really 220? Is it really $300,000 hit on us, or do we recoup some of that from the state? That's
the-
after
that's the
we
net.
receive?
The total revenues of the bus operation over, and I used from a 4-year span from 2014 to 2017. The high water mark, this is money coming in. 752 is the low water mark, 870 is the high water mark. The vast majority of that money is federal and state grants,
$7.5 million, right?
over $500,000.
Yeah.
So $800,000 we get in a year.
870 is
Eight-
the high, 750. So if you want to take an average, it's in the neighborhood of 820 a year.
Okay, so $800,000 a year we get in DOT state funding. Is that correct?
And fare box,
And
what
fare box.
what the customers are actually paying as they ride the bus.
Oh,
That's $100,000 or less. The vast majority of that money are state grants, federal and state grants.
And this $800,000 will now be going to the county.
Correct, as will over $1 million a year in operating expenses, as will post-retirement health insurance, as will shared workers' comp, and as will all the capital costs.
And just,
And they average, and you're looking at over $1.1 million a year going out.
And that's the 300,000.
That's the gap.
That's the $300,000 gap.
The grants don't close the gap for us. With the economies of scale at the county level, the county has made a commitment to their taxpayers that they're gonna take this system and it's not gonna cost their taxpayers anything over the length.
And that's
So they're
what I'm-
saving their constituents, they're providing a service at no additional cost.
But that's where I'm a little bit concerned,
And
you
that's
know?
where we're saving costs.
I know, that's where I'm a little bit concerned. Are they gonna come in and strip our bus system down to where it actually is profitable? You know what I mean? Where the 800,000 covers the cost. I mean, are they going to, I mean, if you think about it in a business sense, why would you take on a loss like this? You're gonna have to come in, revamp, and make it work. So why would you take on a $300,000 losing business if you're not gonna make it work? And I'm a little concerned that they might come in and try to do some things to make this work, and it might not work for the people in the city of Kingston. That's what I'm a little afraid of. You know what I'm saying? That could happen. You know, I'm not saying it will.
And that's where-
I'm not saying it will.
No,
I'm just saying it could.
Right, and one of the things that I think where the operational savings for them is where we have redundancy currently. You know, from an administrative capacity point of view, right now, you know, they have a dispatcher. And so their dispatcher is on and available to answer the calls for any time that there's a bus on the road. Someone can say, oh, call, I left my bag on the bus. I need to get it. Right now, we don't have a dispatcher. So at 3 o'clock when the office closes and the buses run till 7:30, if you're waiting for a bus on the corner and you are wondering where your bus is and it's 45 minutes late, there's no one for you to call currently. And so that's because we are running a system that is extremely lean, and I can assure you that there's nothing that the county could do to be even leaner than our current system. We currently have an office of one. Our transit supervisor is the dispatcher, is the clerk, counts the money, all on with one person. And so there's only so much capacity there at this point. And we also only have 7 full-time drivers. And so if one driver calls in sick for the day, it means that there are a couple of people that had paratransit runs that may have to cancel their doctor's appointments because we don't have enough drivers, because, you know, it's a very difficult, you know, market to work when you have such a small bus system. But on the county side, you know, they're going to be able to integrate those drivers into a much more larger system. So if you have someone that calls in sick, well, look, you've got 15 other drivers that could come in to help cover that. And so that's where they start to see some of their cost savings, but they're still going to be running the same number of buses. We're still going to have 3 routes a day. We're still going to have the same number of paratransit buses. And so there's really not going to be much that they could scale down to really save on the actual service that the public will see. They're going to see that behind the scenes stuff. That's where the county is going to make their savings, because they have a lot less, you know, cost on their administrative side compared to us. And I think the only thing I will point out too about the funding stream is that a lot of the decisions about the funding that we get at our city bus level is made by the county. The Transportation Council at the county level decides how much operational funds we get compared to them. They've been very fair with the city by providing us 50% of the cost of operations, which I think is almost $400,000 a year or something along those lines, right?
In federal?
Yeah,
it would be
and
over,
they split that with
$400,000.
us, 50-50, but they don't have to. And even though they serve, you know, 150,000 plus, or 450,000 riders a year, we serve 50,000 riders a year, they still split that money 50-50. And all it takes is one resolution by their legislature. They could change that to 100% them. And they have the total, complete authority to do that without our say. And so they've been really good with us. And I think that, you know, we just have to keep that in mind, is that not only do we have this type of potential to have this relationship with them, they also sometimes control the purse strings for us in this process now.
Sounds like it.
So, just to,
Could you please speak to the employees? Did you say 7 full-time employees and an administrator?
7 drivers.
7 drivers.
Can you just speak to their positions changing and their financial situation?
So, we've met with the union that represents those drivers, and, we're in communication with them. The county has publicly stated, and again, it's in this contract, that all the drivers will receive a full-time job opportunity presented to them. So they'll all be basically offered a job. And the job, after John looked at the wages and the benefits, in the end, the employees will go to the county with their same seniority, with their same, kind of longevity, if you will, and they will make approximately the same amount of money. And that was, discussed and shared, and we ran the calculations. Yes, they'll be working for a different entity, but what is helpful is that CSEA, which is representing our public employees, it's the same representatives in the same CSEA. While our contracts are different, at least they're able to bargain on behalf of the same, through the same unit, which is helpful. And then the administrator, we currently just have one administrative staff, and that person has been encouraged to apply for jobs within the city of Kingston. And so that person most likely will stay here in other job opportunities.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
So do they know, because last time I talked to the administrator, she sounded like she didn't know that the seniority was going to be carried through for the bus drivers.
Yeah.
Do the bus drivers know that now?
So we have shared we met with CSEA in December, early December,
Okay.
and that was shared. They they know all of that.
And how about the part-time bus drivers? They're not.
No, we have a variety of part-time drivers. We don't have part-time. We have a lot of substitute drivers,
Okay.
and so the substitute drivers are mostly retired individuals that used to either work for us or currently work for DOT. That when it's not snowing, they come and work for us. They wouldn't be guaranteed. They could apply for jobs as well, but most of them don't want full-time work, and so they could work for the county if they wanted to have part-time or substitute drivers with the county. But the only reason we need substitutes is because we have such a small crew, and if one comes in sick, we often have to bring in the substitutes.
Is there be a public hearing on this? When are the people in Kingston going to be able to take a look at the route changes, Steve, if there are any?
We had a public hearing last year,
Yeah.
here at Council Chambers, where we went over all of the routes, and so there was a public hearing. That's when we launched the public survey,
Mhm.
and so we actually had people ride on the buses also. We got a lot of good feedback on that survey. That survey is included in the transit integration plan, and that was, I think, a great opportunity for folks to discuss the routes. I know Dennis Doyle came to caucus and went over the routes with all of you, for folks who were in attendance. And, I think that as we go through this process, if additional route changes need to be made, the county, again, will have to have public hearings and public notices, and will, and they currently do surveys of their riders to be able to see who's riding the bus and who's not.
So they'll have to take all our routes and service them until they make changes.
Yeah, so as part of this, they have proposed route changes already in there, and you can see that in the plan. Most of the routes are almost identical. There are a few changes here and there, and they also added something called a demand response. So for areas that are outside of walking distance, basically to a bus stop, people are able to then call to get picked up and be brought to the bus stop. And the thing that this also does is, not only are we going to have the 3 traditional runs that we have now, the county will be able to stop and pick up passengers within the city, which right now, they really only do that at the hub. And so there'll be runs that actually go to Rosendale, to the mall, out to other places that folks will be able to then hop on those routes as well to kind of get to where they need to go in Kingston, which right now, if you need to get to, downtown and you live uptown, you may have to take one bus, which only comes once an hour. It drops you off at the plaza. You then have to potentially wait up to 45 minutes. And, we've literally had constituents come to us and say that, it took me an hour and a half to get to work, and I live 3 miles from work. And I have a physical, limitation that doesn't allow me to walk. And it's just, this system will, greatly improve the reliability and the timeliness of the of the bus ride, for the bus population.
So going back to the routes and
Yeah.
their proposed changes, do they have
Yeah.
to, because it's changes, will they have to go through the whole process of having a public hearing with that? Or is it because it's merging and moving to them, they could do that first and then the next time they want to do route changes, they have to do?
That's a good question for the county. My understanding would be that they will have to propose those, if this goes forward, they will have to propose those to FTA and most likely have a public hearing on those route changes. They'll have to notice them. They'll also have to have a public hearing on the fare changes because they're also, even though they're reducing the fares to zero for the last 6 months of this year, they will still have to have a public hearing on whether or not the public thinks that that's a good idea or not. Most likely, they'll probably think that that's a good idea, but they will have, they have to have a public hearing on that.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, well, we'll move forward on this with, in conjunction with laws and rules, and send it back. Yeah,
And just, our next laws and rules meeting is the 25th of this month, so if you have any
On a Monday.
questions, it's a Monday, yeah, we had to move it. If you have any questions, I would recommend that you go see Kevin or Steve beforehand so that we could, really pig on the contract.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. One other item, if I could ask you about, Mr. Mayor. As you recall, you, I, and Ed Norman had quite a discussion with the Cuba meeting the other night about the bike plan.
Yeah.
And we had discussed last month, at last month's meeting here, that your office would be coming forth with a survey for property, midtown property, not midtown, uptown property owners and business owners.
Yeah.
About the, where does that survey?
Yeah, and so I think after we talked at Cuba, I took away from the conversation that obviously it's important, as we all discussed, to get the reactions of the actual property owners who our easements are attached to. But I think we also recognize, Doug, and I hope you'd agree with me, that also the tenants, the renters, the business owners that may also would like to take part in a survey. And so we're going to be actually launching 2 surveys now. So we've been working on both of them. And so I would expect in the next week and a half that there will be both a survey that gets mailed out to all 44 easement holders, but that there will then be a kind of a SurveyMonkey public survey that goes out for anyone to take, and they'll be able to identify if they would like, are they a resident, are they a business owner, are they a visitor, are they, a tenant,
Great.
and then we'll be able to kind of have a, so while that survey is being developed, the other thing that I think we heard from the constituents was that they would like us to include more than just a do you like the Pike Plan or not kind of conversation, and they would like us to include cost estimates. And so, as you know, both John and Kevin are working on trying to firm up some cost estimates so that we can put in the survey a little bit more background as best we can with the information that we have. So they've been looking over the CT mail reports that have been provided and also looking at what some of the cost estimates and concerns are. And Kevin has also been working with John and CT mail to prepare the letter to DOT to ask
I'm aware
about.
of that, yeah.
So that's kind of our status. So I would expect that by the next time we meet at Finance, we'll probably have some early survey results back in terms of how everybody feels.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Any other questions or Meg? Okay, thanks. Thanks very much. I'd like to move now.
Hey, Doug?
Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
a question. Yeah, brief question, please.
Thanks. If the bus service, if there's a, if the bus ridership increases and within the city of Kingston and the county bus as a result gets more riders, will we have a way to get the county to expand our service? Not change routes, but how is expansion of service dealt with? It's not mentioned in this at all. The idea of adding longer hours, adding Sunday service, covering the 2 breaks.
Well, I certainly don't have a response for that. I understand your concern. I did get your email on that today, where you voiced
Yeah.
these concerns.
Is there a logical way for that to go into the memorandum of agreement? Because they've talked about how we would deal with route changes, but they haven't talked about how we would do with the amount of service that Kingston has.
Yeah.
I asked Dennis Doyle a question around something like that. I will look back in my notes to see what he said, and if it's not that exact question, I'll reach out and see if I can find out more information
Okay.
before laws and rules.
All right, I'd like to move, again, out of order, to the 16th item on the agenda, the bond resolution for the waterfront resiliency project design, so that we don't keep Kristen and the consultant. Why don't you come and speak to that?
What's the name of the item? Because I don't count 16
Called
things.
authorization of bond
It's
for
on the next
additional design
page.
funds needed for the Kingston waterfront resiliency project.
It's down towards the end of your packet.
It wasn't on the original,
That's the problem.
yeah.
Not on the original?
Well,
This is where
yesterday
you're
when I
asking
checked
for
the
the-
agenda, it hadn't made it from our online.
Just to frame it, what I understand is you're looking for
Thank
an
you.
additional
Ready?
bond of $27,470 for additional design work to cover some capabilities that were not initially considered, is that right?
Yeah, essentially,
Okay, you take
the design, the purpose of this project was to work on shoreline stabilization from the 9W bridge on the waterfront to the end of the Cornell building. And it's about 1,200 feet of shoreline, and we've been working on the design project for about 9 months. And initially, the design was not necessarily to accommodate certain kinds of boats. But then as we've gotten deeper into the design process, we have a project advisory committee, which some of the members are here tonight, from Rabbi Anucci and from Jim and Bob from the Hudson River Maritime Museum. It was determined that we really want to be able to accommodate larger boats in the waterfront, and so I'm going to pass around some of these pictures of the kinds of boats that have already been coming in to the city. There's a cruise ship that came in, I think, 7 times this past year. And so we want to be able to design the shoreline stabilization to accommodate these larger boats. And in able to do that, we have to increase the design costs because there's different engineering challenges, which Ruben from McLaren could speak to.
Yeah, thank you. Members of the committee, I'll let others speak to the community aspects and the economic development aspects that are associated with the cruise ship. But the crux of the matter is additional fee that's being asked for engineering design. And what the reason for that would be is going back to the original grant application and the subsequent contracts, the agreement between the city and Department of State, the agreement that we have, the contract that we're under. It was essentially, as Kristen stated, was a shoreline stabilization, essentially a replacement in kind, looking at the docks, looking at the bulkheads, at the existing conditions, and rebuilding and stabilizing that. In doing that, neither the grants nor the contracts had taken into account these larger ships. As we have been going through and working with the project advisory committee and with Kristen and the offices downstairs, has brought that to the forefront. So what we've done is we put a halt on the design that we had and have looked at what is it going to take to design the new system, to design the replacement bulkhead to be able to accommodate one of these ships that's upwards of 300 feet long. So from an engineering perspective, in a nutshell, is that everything we were looking at was basically designing for craft that's 40 feet. The private boats, the pleasure boats that you see on the docks and in and around the docks that are there now. And the difference is, from an engineering aspect, the forces that come from those are almost incidental with regard to the water, the actions of the Rondout and the Hudson with respect to the anchoring of the docks and getting everything that's there to work structurally as a marine system. When one of these 300-foot ships is brought in, it changes the whole dynamic of the waterfront in terms of the structural engineering. And so the difference in what we're looking for the additional fee is to be able to accommodate the additional design that goes into reviewing passenger loading and unloading, which again, on the smaller craft is incidental. It's not something that's in our typical engineering practice when we would do a waterfront design of the type that was expected under the grant and subsequently the contract. The dock system itself, again, it's incidental where with the smaller ships, we don't do extensive design on the dock that's there with respect to having this additional, again, 300-foot ship. It is now something where we need to take that into consideration and do an analysis of what the reactions of the docks on the waterfront, the craft on the docks. It's orders of magnitude larger for impact loading, for wave action, and that's where the crux of the request is for the additional design fee. The third part of it is environmental review. One thing that was clear in the concept designs that we had done, the way we had the wall and the riprap and stabilization, would not allow for these ships to approach parallel to the dock in the way that the owners of the properties would expect that they would want to have the larger ships come in and be able to bring them in. So it will have, if not a major change, it will at least have a different analysis in terms of how the environmental aspects of the permitting of this new design would be. And then the mooring of the ship itself, just anchor, how is it going to be held either in the wall or with bollards that are inland, that are going to be much more forces on those structures, which again we hadn't planned for in the proposal because it hadn't been explicitly planned for in the grant. And I think part of it is that like many other communities, when the grant was written, estimates had to be made to be able to get the grant. But as the project has developed, it's developed in a way now where there's a much better understanding of what's being sought in the design, where, again, to no fault of anybody, when that grant was written, I think that it was done very well. But in order to receive the grant, there's certain assumptions and estimates that had to be made to get, they want to see everything to the end of what you think as a city it's going to be to get you to design and construction. But until you get into that design development where we are now, you don't really know what that end state is. So again, that's from the engineering perspective, that's the summary of the additional fee that's being requested is for the additional engineering to accommodate these ships.
Thank you for that summary. Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the new designs. We've had discussions about this. I've been in on the discussions. I mean, I think the new design is critical to the continued development and stabilization of the waterfront down there. We're getting more and more opportunities for larger vessels to come in here. Kingston it's a big attraction now. People want to come here. We have some opportunities down the road to bring in some vessels. I don't know how many of you folks were down there when the Viking ship were down there. Anytime there's something like there were thousands of people down there to see this. Everybody stands to benefit from something like this. The maritime I mean, it's gonna be great for them, for, you know, for all the businesses downtown. I mean, this is really gonna help the overall development. I'm really in support of this. I'm glad that the administration is behind this. We talked about the designs, and, you know, of course, money is usually everything. You know, we wanted this design originally, but, you know, you gotta pay for it. So, I mean, I really think this is money well spent.
Yeah,
I don't know if,
Patrick?
Yeah, I don't know if the Hudson Maritime Museum would be able to say a few words, or Rob, to
Just real quick, and you got a hell of an agenda tonight, and I appreciate that. So, you know, so this is not, as you saw, that's why we wanted to give Kristen the pictures, because this is not something that's going to happen in the future. We've had over 25 cruise ships coming in every year to the city docks. This year, we were surprised. Normally, the ships were, 145 to 175 foot. We had one 200-footer. This one's almost 270 feet long, and it's 5 stories high. And the reason that they come to us is because when the 9W bridge went in, it's too low for these guys to get down to the city docks. So these boats have to stop before the bridge, and so we've been acting as the city's cruise ship terminal for at least probably 10 years. And when we first started this, it was like 9 boats a year. We're up to 25 now, and the boats are getting larger. People don't want the small 145 footers. So again, this is not, I don't want to say pie in the sky, but this isn't what's going to happen. This is what's happening right now every year. So we think it's important that this design change be accommodated, and we're glad to see that there's at least some enthusiasm to get that done, because it'll make a huge difference for us.
If I can, Jim Spurrier with the museum, just want to add to that. The 25 is interesting because it's higher than that. The 25 is just the cruise ships this year alone, this past year, and the schedule is already established for this coming year, and it'll be about the same. Hopefully, it's going to increase a bit. But the 270 footer was in here 14 times, and they come in. It's interesting because they've got multiple ships. And one may be a little bit more, one may be 250, but they come in, and in a given week, we'll have one in there at the beginning of the week. It'll leave in the evening, the next day or the day after, another one comes in. We had 1 week, we had 3 in 1 week, and that's just the larger ones. We had 10 of the smaller ones. If you saw the photographs in there, they come in between June and all the way through the year. And again, we'll get a couple of them in a given week. The count this year was approximately 25 of the cruise ships. We still have the larger craft that come in, both tugboats and sailing vessels. Often they're in the 100-foot range as well. And I do want just a couple of things I want to point out too. In terms of improvements, we've made a lot in the last couple of years. In fact, to bring in larger ships, we had to. We actually have some of the larger bollards that were approved by American cruise ships, which are inland. Not to do, might be some modification necessary for that, but that was done just to accommodate them, and it worked very well this year. The bulkhead is critical, but I just want to suggest too, I don't think that it has to be a continuous bulkhead at this design. Even in our own area, we may not have to accommodate our entire waterfront with this heavier design. We know exactly where we do need it. Ideally, it would be nice to have our entire frontage on that, but there's also areas under this contract that don't require that. So I think it really becomes, the engineering is one thing, but when it comes down to a point of contract documents and bidding, then it's got to be looked at very carefully. Where do we need this heavier design? The lighter design is very suitable in other locations, so someone should keep that in mind.
All right. Thank you. Patrick, anything? Bob?
Just very briefly, because I know we have a tight agenda. Historically, large boats came into the roundabout. 150 years ago, we had 275 footers like the Mary Powell and other boats. And now, I see this as an absolutely fabulous opportunity for the city, because we don't really know how many boats we can accommodate here, because everybody knows how many we can't accommodate. But we've got this fabulous waterfront. We're the only deep water protected harbor on the Hudson River north of New York City. And what I see is also some design changes in these boats, where a lot of them are floating timeshares. And it just, I mean, the amount of money that these people carry in their wallets when they get off those boats, we want them to spend it in Kingston. It's a fabulous thing. Now, for the last decade, I have been in discussions with a Dutch company. It's a family-owned company that owns 27 large ships, tour ships that they operate on the European rivers. Their principals have been over here. They met with Steve Finkel and Mayor Sotila, and they've been in touch with me ever since. And they want to establish a tour ship base here in Kingston. They're willing to, put all of this in writing. They already did put this in writing when they wrote a letter of support for the CFA grant, which is the subject of the money that we're spending here now. So it's already on paper. And they contacted me within the last 2 days, and they said they have new designs which are completely fossil fuel free. They're hydrogen and electric, 275-foot cruise ships. They want to build them in the United States because they have to build them in the United States under the Jones Act. They have to be crewed with American citizens. 85% of the vessel has to be built in the United States, and they want to base these in Kingston. We're not just talking about 1 or 2 boats. They're running 27 boats in Europe, based in Holland. They're saying that they will put Kingston on the map worldwide in this area. They just want an opportunity to do it. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to put the administration in direct contact with them and so forth, and they continue this. And from an ecological point of view, from an environmental point of view, having electric 275-foot tour vessels, it's never been done before. We could do it first right here in Kingston.
Patrick, thank you.
Wow, this sounds fantastic, guys, and I can't wait to see it. I got to go down there and see these boats. I haven't been down there when one of the big ones are in. Do you know how many passengers are getting off the boats now? Do you actually make a count? I mean, I know it's not U.S. Customs, but I mean, do you guys have a count of the passengers that get off these boats?
The bigger boats are between 250 and 285, depending upon whether there's two persons in a stateroom or one person. Yeah. And the smaller ones, the 145s to the 175s, and around 125 to 150.
Are these shallow boats that are coming in?
That large one, Jim just told me, I was amazed. That large boat has a draft of 8 feet. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So they're shallow bottom boats.
Eight.
They're shallow bottom boats, and the Rondout is almost like perfect for that. Correct.
It is. I mean,
it's amazing, right, that we have this asset.
You're in 20 feet of water at low tide.
And they were able to take the 270-footer and turn it around in the creek.
You can turn it right around there, right?
Yeah.
Now they have to adjust up, go a little bit further down.
A little further down.
And with a little work, you might even be able to get a bigger boat in there, right?
Well, the tugboat. Yeah.
With the tugboat, you can.
Just move them around.
Just move them around with the tugboat. Wow, this sounds wonderful. And I think we should definitely, as Steve said, I think we should pursue this, no doubt.
We have a committee report from Grants Management, a request to approve bonding in the amount of $27,470 for additional design costs for the Kingston Waterfront Resiliency Project.
Motion. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I have one more question for you guys. Besides beautiful Kingston, New York, where else are these boats stopping? Where else can they stop? Can they stop in Hudson? I mean, does Hudson have a spot they can stop? I mean, where are they going? What's
Yeah, I
their,
had the same question.
where's their, are they going to Albany? I mean, where's the next beautiful spot?
The American
Sauber?
Constitution, I know, has a 7-day cruise that they do in the fall. And I think that's the one where they came through in October. And they started in New York City. They come up with a stop in the midway. Then they go to Albany, and then they stop each night on the way back. I know they're in Hudson. I don't know. I know they do like 6 stops.
You go on the American Cruise Lines, click on the Hudson River. They change them every year. Sometimes every.
Are these the big boats?
Yes. Yeah.
But they're shallow.
Yeah, believe it or not, and they don't need to be where we are. You could put a very, deep.
How deep is that mouth of the river? And right there, the Rondout. Sorry, the creek.
Inside the channel?
Yeah.
18, 20 feet. 20 feet at the shallowest, some places 50.
Near the bulkhead?
Like I said, if you.
Near the bulkhead?
You jump off our bulkhead,
18 feet down.
you go 18 feet down.
I chartered it myself with a vessel that had a depth finder, and we cruised about 10 foot off the bulkhead. It runs about 18 feet at medium tide. It's awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah, no, there's nothing that we could bring up the Hudson River that we couldn't accommodate here.
Really?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Almost anything you could accommodate there, if you had the just wherewithal to get this done.
Yeah, but we get fixed fuel boats that come out, simple. No, I need some water.
Thank you.
It's an exciting topic. I'd like to talk about it for another hour, but I think we need to move on. Thank you for,
And we thank you.
yeah,
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Can I make one sentence?
One sentence, yeah.
Okay. I've been working
That's
with
a short one.
the waterfront for 16 years. In the last few years with the current administration, everything has happened. I've been working with the administration, with the Smart People Administration, with Reuben Hull and his crew, and everybody else involved, and it's just absolutely, it makes everything worthwhile. It's just really smart people, and I just take off in my hat to everybody. It's just really great what's happening now.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, and thank you for coming here tonight.
Thanks.
Kristen,
Thanks.
let's move to
Keep it up, guys.
Flatbush and Foxhall project that's under your purview, Kristen. The ADA, the .54 miles of ADA accessible sidewalks and additional bonding required for that.
So we're not requesting the bond right now. We're just requesting a resolution authorizing the mayor. We just won this grant in December of 2018. So we're requesting a resolution to expend funds in the first instance. The first funds that we would spend would be staff time to start the procurement, get the design. It's a grant for $772,752. There is a required match of $772.
Yeah, and where's my question? Where's the match coming from?
Well, at this
It's a whole
point,
bunch of things, a whole bunch of mechanisms, one of which includes a bond. I see the word bond.
right, we have the generic statement right now. So part of this grant was submitted at the same time as another grant to the New York State DOT for Transportation Alternatives Program grant. To this project would basically build sidewalks and improve the crossings from the Kingston Housing Authority complex on Flatbush over the train tracks, and then going down Foxhall. I think maybe it gets to the Lace Mill. Might be a little bit before that. So we applied for another grant to complement this project to go all the way to the end of Foxhall to Broadway. We haven't heard on that grant yet.
They have a warm feeling
They
about
haven't
it?
made the awards.
Do you have a warm feeling about it?
I think it's a great project.
Yeah.
And I know we met with the railroad coordinator from DOT because of the issues on the pedestrian issues crossing the railroad, the CSX railroad on Flatbush, and then also on Foxhall. There's some major issues with the crossings there. Obviously, people maybe know that there were 2 deaths in the last year on the Flatbush crossing.
Right on the crossing or just on the tracks near there?
On the crossing,
On the crossing?
yeah.
On the tarmac?
Yeah, from what I understand. I don't know that much. Well, Sean, do you know about the second death? You know about the first one was on the crossing.
I don't know, I mean, I don't
Second
speak
death.
to the details or anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons that we thought this was a high priority project. Also, there isn't any really great sidewalk infrastructure from the Kingston Housing Authority on Flatbush. There are areas where there are no sidewalks at all. And then also on Foxhall, if you look, you'll see there's goat trails, or what we call goat trails on the side of the road because there's no sidewalk. And there's a lot of people who don't have access to cars who are walking there. And so it's a pretty, I think, a high priority area to improve the pedestrian infrastructure
Let's talk about Foxhall for a second, right? Foxhall runs this way, correct? And then you got Flatbush coming in this way, but then you got all those streets that go off there, all have sidewalks on them. All the side streets there. Right? So if you cross at this point here, if you cross the street there, all those streets already have sidewalks on them, don't they? I mean, in that area, in that
They all have sidewalks. but
down
they're
street
not-
area, down street, all those streets there. They
Yeah.
all have sidewalks, correct?
Yeah, but to get to those sidewalks, if you're trying to get from Flatbush and you want to go to Broadway, down the street or one of the others, you have to go on Foxhall for a while. And there are not good sidewalks on Foxhall. And if you go there, you can see that people are, I mean, I've seen people in the middle of the road, and it's the same.
No, I know. I travel that every day.
Yeah, so, there's real need there for sidewalks.
And those sidewalks are pretty low. I've seen those get a lot of water, which means people are gonna walk out in the street rather than walk through all those puddles there, because there's nothing but dirt there. So, and I travel that road every day, and I see a lot of folks, but a lot of them work their way out into the street. You know, if there's snow or water, they don't wanna walk through the mud and the snow, so they walk out.
Is that
in
the
street.
second phase of the program, the Foxhall, or is that part of the Flatbush?
No, so this grant funds, the first part.
Which would just be Flatbush down to
It would be
Foxhall?
Flatbush and part of Foxhall. I believe it gets to Cornell, I wanna say to the lace mill. But it's 0.54 miles from the Kingston Housing Authority on Flatbush and then down Foxhall.
Isn't there, after that lace mill, I think I've walked those streets a couple times. Isn't there sidewalks all the way down to Broadway from there?
There are sidewalks, but they're not ADA accessible. So when we're talking about sidewalks, yes, there are sidewalks, but can you get down them with a wheelchair or a stroller pushing your child? I mean, that's the case kind of everywhere in Kingston. You can't.
You can't.
know? So that's why we see so many people in the street.
But you also have pedestrian traffic over there, right?
Yeah, we have a lot of pedestrian traffic. I mean, it's been identified as there's commercial areas there's businesses on Foxhall, there's quite a few businesses.
Dollar store.
The dollar store,
More
there's.
businesses are popping up there too.
Yeah, there's new restaurants that have popped up, there's all sorts of, there's, I think, some barbers. So there's a lot going on Foxhall, and to get back to your original question is, I don't know exactly if we get this other grant, then that would help provide some match for this.
Because
But
that grant may have a match too.
that grant does have a match, so I think, do you remember, Sean, the total amount? Was it 3 million
For the whole project?
for the entire project? So essentially it would be, if we get the other grant, then we'll have somewhere in the ballpark of a $3 million project for which we would have a match of $772,000.
Well, I think it makes sense. We have the money, we have the grant, let's get started on it.
Aren't the homeowners responsible for the sidewalks out in front of their home on Foxhall Avenue? And the business-
Property owners throughout the city are responsible for sidewalks.
Correct. So the ADA, so then those sidewalks should be maintained, and then the ADA would be the corner. You would be taking care of the corner, or would you rip up all the bluestone and put new sidewalks in?
It would be complete replacement, so yes.
And what's the if people are responsible for the sidewalk in front of their home, how come we are doing this?
Because this is sort of a bigger question, it's a systemic issue. We, hypothetically should have cited homeowners for not maintaining their sidewalks for the last 50 years, but that's not what the city has done, and so,
Wouldn't that be more cost effective?
Maybe more, it's very complicated, because then you've got homeowners who maybe don't have the funds to do a full replacement of sidewalks, and you also are not going to get uniformity when you do that. If everybody is replacing their sidewalk at different rates and different times, you're not going to have a uniform replacement of sidewalks.
In some of that area where you, what you call them, boat paths?
Yeah, there are no
There's
sidewalks.
no houses there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
On the
like-
left-hand side,
Right,
you're going out.
going towards,
Right.
on the left-hand side, going back in towards Broadway.
Right. There's no,
I mean, there's no
nothing
houses there.
I don't think there's sidewalks on either side of that street, is there? On Flatbush, is there sidewalks on
Flatbush,
the, on
there's
the?
sidewalks on the southern side, not on the northern side.
Cemetery side.
The cemetery side does not have.
Does not have sidewalks.
For part of it, and
For
then
part
for
of it.
part of it they do. Yeah, it's intermittent.
And how about the other side?
The other side is, there are sidewalks, but it's also intermittent in the
It's
sense
intermittent
that,
also?
you know, people have maintained them in the way that they wanted, and somebody put asphalt, and somebody put something else, and then it's intermittent.
So it's really about it's not that there's not legal sidewalks already in place, it's that they just haven't been maintained by the owners of the properties, is that correct?
I mean,
It's up to standards.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of some were never installed in the first place,
Oh.
and then, you know.
Because there are dirt trails.
Closer to, on the cemetery side, closer to Flatbush, I think some were never installed in the first place, and then, in other areas, it's because of a lack of maintenance or, other issues. So, I mean, the issue of sidewalks is something that the Complete Streets Advisory Council has been looking at in great depth, looking at a new system, a new paradigm to fund and replace sidewalks that doesn't utilize the current way that we have it written in the code, but we haven't made a formal proposal yet for how to change that system.
And, okay, so since that system's not changed, who's gonna maintain these new sidewalks?
They would be, I mean, we would follow our existing code.
So in 20 years, 30 years, these things are gonna be right back to where they were.
Not if we change the system.
But right now, presently, the system's not changed.
But the
So
system,
shouldn't we change the system before we put in the sidewalks?
we're in the process of changing the system. One of the things that the mayor's been looking at is a way to take some of the responsibility of sidewalks away from property owners so that the city would be in charge of maintaining them. There's a question of cost and some things like that. City of Ithaca, for example, has done this. So you could look into their system. But I mean, in the meantime, this is a place where there's a lot of dangerous places. There's a lot of foot traffic there, and I think to wait 20 years would be irresponsible.
I didn't say wait 20 years, I said in 20 years,
Yeah.
if we have the same system set up, right? It's just like if we put up a canopy and we don't maintain it, it's gonna fall down and 20 years later, we're wondering why we have to repair this thing or replace it. So,
Well,
I mean,
fortunately,
where is
we're also going
where
to be
is the
talking
si-
about the pedestrian and bicycle master plan at this meeting in the next agenda item, and we can address more of, you know, the city. I think the city currently has a very proactive approach to improving sidewalk and pedestrian infrastructure because it's an economic driver. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do for ADA access for people with lower incomes who don't have a car. So I think the city is putting a lot of effort and priority into improving our current infrastructure and coming up with sort of an asset management plan that will
That's what I would
help
like.
us.
I'd love to see that asset
help
management
us-
plan
right.
working.
Help us
Let's
maintain
vote
it.
Andrew.
Yeah, I have two questions. So what will happen with the bluestone that's on Foxhole? Or is that not on this part of the project? I can't remember. There's a section of Foxhole that has bluestone, and right now in our code it has to be in kind. Would it still be in kind, or is the bluestone going to just go to Bluestone Bank? Do you know?
Well, it really would depend on the design and the cost. So for the section that we're talking about, there isn't that much bluestone. The section that's funded by this grant.
Okay.
There isn't that much bluestone. I think we proposed concrete sidewalks there, and the bluestone would go to the bluestone blank. For the other end, if we win that other grant, there's a lot more bluestone over there. It's not mandated in our code to replace with bluestone because it's not a historic area. So that would be part of the design process, and when we'd have to discuss, you know, what are the priorities. The challenge, I mean, I have to admit, I was much more of and I still am a bluestone lover before I started working for the city. But when you look at the costs of replacing bluestone, there's a lot of issues with sourcing it now is very difficult. So if you walk on a Beale Street, we have a brand new bluestone project that happened down there maybe 4 years ago, and bluestone's already delaminating
Mhm.
I know,
because
that's-
it's, you
The
know,
whole-
it's
not the right kind of
it's not-
bluestone.
It's just, you can't source bluestone like the historic bluestone,
Right.
so it's very difficult to replace, and if you try to lift up the current bluestone, it often crumbles or it's not the right size for when you want to lay it back down, so it can be very complicated. There's a lot of other opportunities to, you know, sort of place, like on Broadway, for example, when we're redoing Broadway, there's some big bluestones in front of UPAC. We're gonna be able to keep those in certain areas, so you can keep sort of historic pieces that fit in, but that would depend on the design process.
And then my other question, I mean, because I think the system can be worked on while we're moving ahead with this project. Are there many other projects like this in other areas of the city that you're looking at doing sidewalk work?
This was the new one that we got this year, but we're also working on Henry. There's actually a meeting on March 5th. We're about to advertise for Henry Street project, and then Franklin is coming up. So
Yeah.
this is the newest grant award.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to get right to a motion on the resolution.
Okay, we'll call the question. A resolution authorizing the mayor of the city of Kingston to expend funds in the first instance under the terms of safe and accessible Flatbush and Foxhall Avenues project.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
We need that sidewalk.
Yeah.
Is that your ward?
It's Tony's, but
Oh,
still,
it's Tony.
but still, it's
Okay.
just dangerous.
What about the other end?
We understand that.
Yeah, some of it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Rennie, I'll sell you that boat really cheap. Some of that. boat-
Okay.
Only if you can name me, where in Kingston is that building?
Yeah, that's the plans for the lighthouse. When they refurbish the lighthouse, that's what it's gonna look like.
Okay, we now move to Julie as a request for several budgetary transfers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, first we're going to the short-term capital purchases,
Okay.
okay?
Yep. So, thank you for your time. The first thing that I'm speaking about, again, is the short-term capital purchases. Last year, you approved $271,500 for, per Mayor Noble's request, to transfer funds from the fund balance to purchase 5 new vehicles for the city and 7 vehicles for the city. By the end of 2018, 4 of those had been purchased with that money from the fund balance. 3 of those were not because of lack of availability of the vehicles we were looking for. So that funding, that amount of money was not spent to the total of $112,500. Those same 3 vehicles, which are 2 in the building department and 1 in parking enforcement, 3 all-wheel drive plug-in hybrid vehicles are still being sought, and so thus we would like to request again for 2019 $112,500 from the fund balance for those 3 vehicles.
So these were monies that were put back into the fund balance because they were unexpended,
Yes,
and now we want to pull them out and spend it.
that's it.
There- John, does that sound all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You said these are electric vehicles?
Yes,
And you have the stations for them already put up?
Yes.
We're all set for them to go, right?
yes,
We just need to purchase them.
yes. The particular ones we're looking for are not as readily available as we want them to be, but
What are we looking for, Julie?
Mitsubishi Outlanders.
Oh, yeah?
But we are literally waiting every day. It should be any moment that they are available.
Okay.
Okay, this was money that was banked, and then we're going to take it out of the bank, unexpended, so. From fund balance, withdraw $112,500. $75,000 would go to the building department for motor vehicles, and $37,500 would go to for on-street parking. Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, now Julia, budgetary transfers for, you got 4 of them, right?
Yep. Do you want me to start with a particular one?
Well, let's go in the order, the natural resource inventory grant.
Okay, so this will just be a string tonight of Kristen and I really asking for budget transfers of things that were not expended for last year. So this is our natural resources inventory, which is a 2015 grant. It's been going swimmingly and is it's 99% done. However, we're just waiting on the final deliverables. And thus far, there is money that was not expended at the end of 2018 to pay the consultant once he finally gives us our deliverables we're waiting on. And so thus, we are asking to transfer the unspent funds from of $80,290.56 to the 2019 budget.
Did you say going swimmingly? I haven't
Yeah.
heard that phrase in a long time.
Oh, really?
This is also not the season.
Oh, I didn't realize, sorry. Well,
Is this
I-
for pool
You know what we
equipment?
also say at home? It's snowing like the Dickens, and the other day my kid
Oh,
said, what does like
man.
the Dickens mean? And we said, I have
I
no
like
idea.
it.
I don't know what that means. We just say it.
What is this for, Julie?
This is for the natural resources inventory. So this is mapping our natural resource data. So our streams, our trees, our forest cover, our wetlands, we've got, 50 different maps of data. And it's done.
I can't find it.
It's
I
done,
was-
and when our the natural resource inventory
It takes me
narrative itself is
2 hours to do
done, the
this.
final GIS data just
This
needs to be
one?
delivered
To
to
get
me in a
this
final
whole thing,
package, which should happen within the next few weeks.
From this big
I'm
paper.
withholding the consultant's final money until I
know.
receive
I
that,
saw all
and
this in my
then
box.
this will be paid out.
Okay.
This project will hopefully be closed in this first quarter of this year.
Motion.
Zero impact, okay.
Second.
Who seconded?
Me. Take your pick.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So the third is.
Wait, that was, all right. Third, okay, I'm calling it the second. You're talking about the transfer from beach and swimming into capital
Yes,
improvement?
so the second under this item
Yeah,
is to transfer unspent grant monies for a DEC Kingston Point Beach ADA improvement project that we started working on last year. This is to make sure that Kingston Point is ADA compliant, which means redoing the parking spaces at Kingston Point, adding in a beach ramp and a beach wheelchair so that folks can get to the water, redoing the bathroom access so that there is a ramp going up to the bathroom, which is not currently accessible, and ensuring that one of the 4 changing stations, which were built and intended to be ADA compliant but are not, making sure that those are. We are working with our engineering department to help with the design. We would be hiring a consultant to do some of the work and doing some of the labor in-house. And this is to take $12,470 that were not spent in last year's budget and shift them over to.
out of the grant into capital improvements.
Correct.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, so the third is.
Municipal waste.
Yes. The third is a new grant that you haven't seen yet. So this is a 2-part resolution. One is to authorize the expenditure of the funds as we have not expended funds yet. And the second is to transfer the funds accordingly. So this is a grant that is a 1-year grant which we received through the Department of Environmental Conservation, particularly because this year we are going to be changing from single stream to dual stream recycling and thus need a ramped up recycling education component. So this is taking care of that. So that means managing the outreach, the signage, the labels on the totes, and everything in between. And it is a fully reimbursed grant. It will be fully reimbursed, but we need to budget for this to outlay $3,500 for grant supplies and materials which will be added as an expense. And after speaking with John, you'll see that these on the original resolution and actually in the committee report, you see that these will not add up. And so after speaking with John, there will be a modification that we'll make before you sign off on this committee report. 23,000, the bulk of this was already in the 2019 adopted budget as salary. So really the only change is now going to be an addition to, we'll change the $26,890.25 in the New York State Aid, Culture, and Education to reflect just the $3,500 for general materials. And
Where's the rest go?
The rest is already in the city budget.
Right. So we just.
You're taking 26,890 out of the grant, but only transferring $3,500
Yeah,
in.
and that's what Julie's saying. We're gonna change that 26 to 3,500. We're going to, it'll be $3,500, the from and the to. It won't be only $3,500.
The remaining amount won't need to be transferred because it's already been budgeted for.
Should
in
we
the
write that in
2019
now?
Yes, yep, you can write that in.
$3,500.
So both numbers should, the from and the to should both reflect
Okay.
3,500. Still no financial impact.
So is the rest of the text right then?
The rest of it's fine. Yeah, I had that, this is the correction I had on mine. So if that agrees with what you have, then we're fine.
All right, so that's okay.
Yeah,
So-
I just changed that to 35.
Yeah, well, I did too, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there motions?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And the
We'll
last,
change on the sample resolution too.
Huh?
Did you have a sample resolution there too, or no?
Yeah.
You just pencil it on there too.
Okay, next one is,
the windows,
building maintenance.
this is the grant we've all been waiting for on the edge of our seats. So this is the NYSERDA funding that we received with no, as a reward effectively for being a clean energy community. It's $100,000 with no match. This is to request the transfer of funding from unspent funds from 2018 of the full $100,000. And just as an update on this project, this is the project that will be installing storm windows in this building and replacing the building with LED lighting as well. We will be going out to bid for this project within the next 3 weeks. And hopefully we'll have a response by the end of March, which means that there will not be new windows exactly this winter, but they will be within the first or second quarter, well, the second quarter of this year.
Okay,
We
no
will be
match,
excited.
beautiful.
That's nice.
Yes, so this is to transfer the money over from this
Motion
year.
on
No
this?
Motion.
financial impact.
Second.
Gotcha.
Who got it? Who got it?
Go ahead.
Huh?
Steve got
I
it.
think he hit the
No,
button.
he made the motion.
I think it's my first or second.
I made the motion. I did.
Literally
You made the
sitting right in
motion.
my office.
We both kind of seconded at the same time.
Flip a coin.
Take
That's a good motion right there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it. Okay.
That's all you
Move.
need from me, right?
Yeah.
Move on to, this one's gonna take a long time. Sue Cahill wants to transfer $36.91.
Oh, no.
This is just outrageous.
And she's not even here to defend
Where is
it.
she? She's not here?
I
I believe the chutzpah of this request.
This, from seasonal employee to office supplies. Is there a motion on that?
Motion.
You're really taking a risk here, aren't you?
I know I'll hear about it.
And the second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, just kidding, just kidding. Yeah, aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving on to pedestrian and bicycle master plan. Let's see. A resolution authorizing the mayor to expend funds in the first instance under the terms of the pedestrian and bicycle master plan project. Let me see, is that, the grant was awarded in December there's a match, 50%, total project cost of $120,000. The grant is $60,000, which is 50%. The other match will come from in-kind, bond, or another grant. Tell us about that, okay?
Sure, so we applied for and received this match from the DEC, kind of like Foxhall. It's the same funding source for a pedestrian bicycle master plan. And my understanding is that this isn't to bond for it now, this is to get started on the project. And we are in talks with the Ulster County Transportation Department to try to see if there's funding for some of the sidewalk inventory component. So we don't know how much of that will be part of the match yet.
Mhm.
I can speak to why a sidewalk and pedestrian, like a pedestrian and bicycle master plan is important. I can also speak to why I think it's important to do it now. And I can try to answer any other questions.
Okay.
Go ahead, let's hear it.
Sure. So as your previous discussion elaborated, our sidewalks are pretty bad. I think we can all agree to that. We don't, as we said, we don't have a system for improving it right now. This plan would look at the current infrastructure for sidewalks and for pedestrians and also for bicycle infrastructure. It would evaluate what we currently have. It would also tell us, it would make a prioritization list of what should be fixed first. It would also give suggestions for programming, how to change behavior to do more walking and biking. Pedestrian and bicycle master plans increase the health of our culture. If more people are able to walk and bike, they are healthier. It decreases the amount of automobile traffic emissions. It also would reduce the need for parking.
Mhm.
Let's see. I think now is a good time to do it because we got this grant. We had asked the Ulster County Transportation Department in the past for funding, but now we've gone to the state and gotten a match for it. Also within this plan is an ADA transition plan. The city, to my understanding, has to do that at some point anyway, but at this time we found some match money for it. So we found some funding to help us with that transition plan. I also think now is a good time to do it because you've gotten grant funding from Novo Foundation for my position to help manage this project. So you have kind of a free employee that's ready to work on this right now. I think that's another good reason to do it right now.
Can I just add a few things? So 10,000 of the match is written into the budget to come from in-kind staff. So we do know that, at least
Okay.
that. And the other 50,000 for the consultant is still what we're trying to work on, finding other sources for the match. I also just wanted to mention that the ADA transition plan is a mandate. We've discussed it a number of other times with the Complete Streets Advisory Council, and the city has made some effort to get it started. We've had a couple of interns. It is a big task because basically we need to inventory 80 miles of road and sidewalk. I don't know the exact mileage of sidewalk, but it's a huge task. So this plan would do that for us and help us meet the federal mandate to inventory our sidewalks and come up with a plan for how, basically an ADA transition plan is a 20-year prioritization plan of, okay, this is how you're going to get your sidewalks fixed and in this order. It would also help with making decisions when we are applying for funding. So right now we applied for Flatbush and Foxhall because we know there's some pretty serious need there. There's some deaths on the crossing. But really, if as a grants writer or director of grants management, I look at what's the next project in Kingston. How do I choose? How do we choose? Not me, but how do we choose? Which are the priorities? And that this plan would help us decide which projects are the priority to have good sidewalks first.
Do you know how they're going to be prioritizing? I mean, is it just the sidewalks that are in the worst shape, or is it the area where they think it has the most walkers or low income? Do you know?
I think there's a number of factors, and the consultant that we would hire to do that would be a professional that's done many of these kinds of projects before. And we're not the only city that has would want a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Albany has one, for example. So there are other communities that we can look to for examples. So, right, my understanding is that they look at the how bad the sidewalk is. They also look in relation to gaps. So if one block, if one address has great sidewalks and there's a break in another one, I think there's a certain priority that's given to filling in those gaps. I think there's also taking into account destinations. Is it near a school? Is it near service? Those kinds of things. So I think all those things are, taken into consideration.
They would do pedestrian counts, so then they would know where are the generators of pedestrian traffic, and it would really be science-based. It would be kind of like what we were talking about with the bus system, a science-based system to look at where would we best prioritize our dollars.
Just walk all the way back to work.
Well, I also want to bring up that it's an
Hire some people.
Make sure you step on that little rubber hose though, that rolls across the sidewalk.
But I also want to bring up that it's an equity issue. So many of the neighborhoods where people walk and bike as their primary form of transportation, those are the neighborhoods that have the gaps or don't have sidewalks at all. I really feel like it needs to be looked at in a whole system and so that we can help people evenly, not just where we personally walk, but where the need is really shown.
I was kidding about myself.
I but it brings up issues.
Could you go back to the grant fund? The grant, it was a little confusing. There's lots of stuff going on here. Could you go back to the money again one more time? Since this is the finance committee?
Yeah.
Could you go back to the money funding stream? I got kind of lost because you had like 10 things going on. Not 10, but you had a few things going on there.
You want me to? So basically, it's a grant from the DEC Climate Smart Communities program. It's a planning grant. They give you $60,000 and they expect $60,000 in match.
And we're gonna match that with in kind 10,000 at least.
We have at least 10,000 in
And
kind.
then we need 50. We need to come up with 50,000.
Yeah, and so that's right now where
We're looking for another thing.
And
We're looking for
this would just be for the planning stage. There'd be no concrete put down.
No construction.
No construction,
Just
nothing.
the
This is
plan.
just the plan.
Mhm.
50,000. And that would be, how much planning would it be? Would it be citywide planning or would you
yeah,
just?
citywide.
It would be citywide for that amount of money? There'd be a
Well,
citywide?
it's $100,000 that we would contract with the consultant for citywide pedestrian bicycle
So you
master.
put the whole 120, is it 120?
120, so 20,000 would be for staff time.
Okay.
10,000 of that would come from the grant, 10,000 would come.
So you
from
pay
the
staff some of the money, right?
to manage the project.
To manage the project?
Yeah.
With that. And then the 100,000 would go towards the consultant to come in, take a good look at our town and see where we can put, where we should help our infrastructure with biking and hadn't we looked at that a lot already?
We have, but we don't have a master plan, and so it's kind of like the comprehensive master plan. Well, it's better than the comprehensive master plan in the sense that it's detailed. It gives you a prioritized list of how to move forward to improve your infrastructure.
And we don't have that yet? We don't
No,
have
and
that?
it's not something that's easy.
So
to
we've been
come up
just like going off the cuff with these bike paths and stuff like that? We really don't have any
I
plan?
wouldn't call it going off the
Well,
cuff.
you know what I mean.
I mean,
Okay.
I think, we have a green line plan that was put together by Alta Planning and Design.
But that's not the whole
As a
city.
conceptual plan, that we hired I don't know if we did, we worked with the Kingston Land Trust and they hired Alta Planning and Design to help us come up with the concept for the green line.
Right.
That's actually something so for example, the green line, we had a conceptual plan, now we're building it out. Because it gives you the path forward.
Right.
For the rest of the city, what do we do? How do we move forward? What's the
Okay.
best way to move forward? So that's what this plan
That's what this
does.
would do.
Yeah.
So this would take the green line into account and everything else already into account.
And also the Empire Trail.
And the
So
Empire
The Empire
Trail.
Trail is coming through the city of Kingston, but we
Yeah,
don't
that's
currently
wonderful.
have a plan to bring them from the Empire Trail into our businesses on Broadway.
Right,
So we need to figure out which routes are the best routes for them.
yeah.
This would take that into account. So clear that up for us.
Okay, we have a
Thank you.
resolution authorizing the mayor to expend funds in the first instance under the terms of pedestrian bicycle master plan project, $60,000.
Motion.
Second.
Who seconded? You made a motion, you can't motion.
He did.
I made the motion.
Come on, Doug.
We don't sound the same, do we?
So, All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Emily.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, John. Finally, we get to
Want to
you.
do Franklin?
Huh?
Want to do Franklin?
Yeah, yeah, Franklin Street, Franklin Street.
And the staff here, or-
Let's see, you're looking to, bond for $1.5 million, and then pay back with the grant.
Correct.
So, okay. Why don't you describe the project?
You want to give an overview, Sean, of the project limits?
Certainly, well, I don't, if the committee has heard the history of the project at all, but this was a grant from 2 years ago that the city just recently started working on late last year. And so it's the entire length of Franklin Street, from Wall to Broadway. And it's about a mile long. This will be sidewalks and ADA ramps on both sides of the street. 2 sections of it will be bluestone because it is in the Fair Street Historic District. And we're asking for bonding for $1.5 million because you have to expend all the funds before you get reimbursed from the state for half of it. So the financial impact is only half of that, $750,000. Yeah, I guess any questions or anything else regarding the project?
Is this part of the, are we also doing the pipes too, underneath the sidewalks? Is this the same?
The gas line replacement program?
No, the water pipes.
The lead.
This
The
is
lead
line
abatement
replacement?
program.
We would
Is
want.
this in combination with the lead abatement program?
No, it's not, they're 2 separate projects, they're on the same street, but yes, there would be some coordination.
They are on the same street though, correct?
Yeah. We wouldn't necessarily, we would coordinate it, so we're not digging up new sidewalk to put in those.
Would you do that, please?
Not the first person to suggest that, so people want to make sure that happens.
All right, so what's the deal with the sidewalks? Are they just in awful shape?
Why do we choose this
Non-ADH
area?
compliant, non-existing, combination of
What did why did we
all of
choose
the
this area?
above? Why are we looking to do this?
Well, we originally chose this project because of the proximity of, or the number of children who are walking to school and to the Hodge Center on this street. They have a walking school bus that comes every day from George Washington to the Hodge Center. I don't know if any of you have driven down Franklin, but even not in the wintertime, there are people walking in the street because the sidewalks are not accessible, ADA accessible. And it's been a priority area for the mayor. I think there's a number of projects happening on Franklin Street. And so this is one that was a priority at the time that we were writing grants. I think this was a 2017 application.
Okay.
I know that walking school bus is a really important thing that this George Washington School is doing. My wife actually walks the school bus sometimes, and it's a pretty important thing. Get these kids to school, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's also a lower, part of the grant application, I'm just trying to remember, it's a lower income neighborhood, so, that's part of the narrative for the grant application, like, let's make, this neighborhood more accessible for people who may, not have access to cars, or may have a disability, or some other, challenge that makes it difficult to get around.
Seen a lot of changes happening on Franklin Street, aren't we? That goes right into the uptown area, which is booming economically. I would imagine that those homes are going to turn over, and this project would probably help them that real estate boom to happen on that area. So it may facilitate people buying homes there that normally wouldn't buy homes there.
It also
And
complements the Henry Street project, which is
Yeah.
the same thing's happening on Henry Street,
Mhm.
the project is underway, so.
Okay, so there's actually 2 resolutions here. One is to expend funds in the first instance, and the other is to bond for $1.5 million, of which half of that would be
Reimbursed.
reimbursed. Yeah. Okay.
A little different than the other ones. The other ones were just doing the expend funds. This one,
Right.
we're ready to ask for the bond.
So the first resolution is authorized the mayor to expend funds in the first instance of $750,000.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now, this will make us ADA compliant also, or help that. How many sidewalk curbs do we need to make to do that? To be
It's not just the
compliant?
sidewalk
To be
curbs,
compliant.
It's the entire sidewalk. You know, to be in ADA compliance, you can't have more than like a 1/4 inch gap.
It's got to have the
anywhere.
correct cross slope and surface texture and no trip hazards.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the curb ramps, it's the entire
Right.
surface.
Can I ask a quick question?
So the other resolution is to bond for $150,000 to appropriate the required funds to complete the project. The city will be reimbursed $750,000 from the DEC grant. So you borrow $1.5 million and you get $750,000 from the grant credited towards the bond.
Well, just to be clear, that provides the authorization for us to borrow that. Doesn't mean we'll have to borrow that full amount.
Right. Uh-huh.
So, but it gives us the authorization for cash flow purposes. If we need to borrow
Are we
the
doing
full
any?
cost, we can.
I know we have a new DPW superintendent who has been doing an excellent job and doing more projects in-house. Will any of this work be done by our staff? Or will this all be done by outside sources?
No, this would be done through bid with an outside contractor.
Are we unable to do work like this?
We
Sidewalk
don't
work?
have the I think that's part of the pedestrian bicycle master plan as far as figuring out the answers to that. But we don't really have the capacity to do work like this in-house. If we did, I think we would have done it a long time ago, but DPW is working, at capacity, just trying to maintain sewer infrastructure and whatever
I
else.
agree with that.
Yeah, so to do this kind of work, it's not easy.
Well, I mean, if 1.5 million is a lot of money, you could hire employees who are skilled at this task, who can easily, use the levels and grading and do those things. Not easily, but of course it would not be easy job. But it would be something we could with this a lot of money. Can't we hire some staff to do this?
I like the way that you're thinking, and that's where I think you should check out what Ithaca's doing. Because essentially what they do is they have a sidewalk engineer with a dedicated staff who figures
Right.
out how many miles each
Correct.
year, and they
There's a
do
lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say for this particular money, but I think in the future the city needs to look at how are we managing sidewalks as an asset, and what's what makes the best economic way to do this.
Is our inability to do it manpower or equipment or
Well,
combination of
I
both?
think this project entails more than just sidewalks, right? It's the sidewalks, the curbs, and the asphalt of
I don't know that there's asphalt.
there's not just curb and sidewalk, curb and sidewalk work.
With some bicycle infrastructure, bike racks, and
1 mile of road, so it's 10,000 linear feet of sidewalk and curbs to do both sides.
Right.
Recently, like in advance of the First, Second, Third Avenue, or First, Second, Third Street paving that was done, the curb work and everything in advance of that, it's contracted out. It's, specialized formwork and materials to form those curbs that the city doesn't have.
So
At least
it's
not in the
technology.
needed quantities.
We don't have the technology, is
To
what you're
build
saying.
10,000 feet of sidewalk in a short, say one season
Right,
is more than we're equipped for.
yeah.
It's also the design, so with this, part of this funding will be to hire an engineering design team to design the project. And yes, we have a wonderful design engineer, but also when you work on a design team, or a design firm, you have a whole team of other people who have specialties. And so, you know, that's a real challenge in-house for us to design, because we don't have a team of 10 engineers who are working on the same project in a quick amount of time. So I don't know if you.
Could I ask for a motion on the bonding request?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's move to Plotskill. As I understand, you're looking for a small amount
Yeah,
there,
this is-
$1,400.
Correct, yeah.
Do we really need a bond for that? I mean, I don't object to
Well-
the concept, but
Yeah, I considered briefly taking it out of my department budget, but it's just a little more than I prefer to spend, and it's to augment 50,000 in.
oh, wait, we already bonded for
50.
You're already bonded for 50, you're just increasing the bond authorization.
no big deal. I don't have a committee report on that.
Oh, here you go.
Huh?
I drew one up.
Thank you. Okay. Increase the bonding for Plotskill Creek drainage and design from $50,000, which was previously bonded, to $51,400. So increase the bond by $1,400.
You just,
Is there a motion?
what do you need, what happened?
It's detailed in the letter, but there were certain inputs to the consultant's work that were believed to be available. Technical matters affecting the watershed model that in fact could not be found when they were needed, so the consultant had to recreate those.
Yeah, I don't know.
It added roughly 5% to their proposal, so.
It was lost paperwork?
It's not clear to me whether it ever existed or was believed to exist, but, yeah.
Okay.
Your motion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. You're not done yet.
Next one. Yep, one more.
Let's see, we're on Midtown parking lot, right? Yeah, we have, this is for Midtown parking lots. Let's see. We've granted for Green Innovation Grant Program and in 3 parking lots, Midtown. We're selected to receive up to $1.2 million. Are we gonna get $1.2 million?
Yes.
Yeah, we will.
And the match is 10% of the total project
Yeah,
cost. So that's-
1.33
Right.
million, of
Right.
which 10% is what we're asking for tonight, along with the authorizing the mayor to enter into the grant agreement and making a finding under secret.
So what you're looking for here is authorize the mayor to execute a grant agreement to expend funds in the first instance, but you're not asking for a source of $133,000, right?
Here you
Yeah,
go.
that was,
Yeah.
There's a bond for
How
130.
many parking spaces are we creating?
it's on existing asphalt. The biggest lot is at the Cornell Street lot, and then there are 2 smaller ones on Broadway. And I think that if anything, some spots are being converted to green space under this project, and other things are being straightened out where there's currently no striping. So it's probably not a net increase or decrease in parking.
It's basically maintenance of existing parking lots that the city
Yeah.
owns, so.
And then making sure the runoff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar to what was done at
Uptown.
uptown parking lots with the infiltration. Incorporate some of that pervious pavement and rain gardens.
Okay, so the resolution is to authorize the mayor to execute a grant agreement with the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, EFC, to expend funds in the first instance for the Midtown Parking Lot Green Infrastructure Project and make a finding on the secret.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
This is a good grant.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
90%.
They're all good.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
This is
I
better.
prefer 90% to 50.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So do we.
But then in conjunction with that is request for bonding authorization for essentially the match. It's 133.
We rounded up to 135. There is the potential, the grant for 1.2 million is my understanding. So this project hasn't gone out to bid yet.
Yeah.
So we're rounding it to 135. There is potential for that to have to be
Yeah.
adjusted, the city share.
That's
We're
the
gonna go with the 135 for the time being, and then, you know, when the costs are better defined, we can come back and revisit that.
All right, is there a motion on this? For bonding authorization?
Motion.
Second.
But I can speak when we were looking at, you know, the kiosk installations, we went and visited the parking lots and the seat LA lots. Some of these parking lots are pretty rough. The Prince Street lot.
All in favor?
Really needs some
Aye.
work.
Opposed?
So it's a good project.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I think that's it, John.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
And Kristen, I think, and Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen.
We get to keep having fun.
Is Franklin Street getting trees?
No, that's a
Well,
good
that
question.
would be part of the design. So, yes, I would say that would be part of the design to add greenery.
Will they be shade trees?
I don't know the answer to that question.
How do we keep up with that? Like what the actual design will be?
You look on the under Franklin Street on the project webpage. If you go to Kingston on the Move, Franklin Street, that's where we have any sort of information. I mean, we would have a press release when we have a public information meeting. I mean, we haven't even procured the consultant yet.
And
So,
does the consultant decide, like the street design?
no, it's a, you know, a combination of the consultant and the community and the city. So, yeah, it's, you know, usually there's a number of public meetings with any project where we are able to do public input.
Okay, next item I think is straightforward, is budget transfer for optical insurance. Transfer of $5,610 from retiree hospital medical into various optical insurance accounts.
Motion.
The next,
talk
just so
about it?
you're all aware, the next several transfers, these are all this year in housekeeping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve, you make.
Motion.
Second.
Motion.
Second.
Wait,
Motion.
wait,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next one is budget transfer of medical insurance. This is great news here. Transferring $271,000 out of various hospital medical accounts. Most of it's going back into contingency. Look at that.
Yes.
Boy.
$213,000 going into contingency.
Motion.
Yeah, you grab that one, huh?
Quickly. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next one is a similar one for dental insurance. Transferring $2,832 into various departments.
Motion.
Second.
Steve and
Scott.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Budget transfer. Oh,
This is, the
this
next,
is not bookkeeping, this is,
this is the CSEA contract. So
Yeah.
this is, when you pass the CSEA contract, we approved it, we went over the financial implications, we didn't do the budgetary transfer at that time.
right,
This is to cover just the retro cost for the CSEA contract. So it's taking money back out of contingency and putting it into the various retro pay lines.
Motion. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sue Cahill, shade tree. This looks like looking for a transfer of $12,000 out of the contingency. Let me see if I understand. Total expenditure is 62.5. Revenues of 50,500, of which, let's see if I can remember this one.
It's a local match portion of
Yes.
this grant.
We got a grant of 50,000 from the DEC. There's a $500 private contribution. And we're looking to draw out $12,000 from the contingency to do what? Removal of the trees identified in tree inventory. I can't speak to any details on that. But looking at 62.5 project, which we need to draw out 12,000 from contingency to match a grant of 50,000.
Motion.
Second. I got a tree that needs to come down in Ward 3, so I said I got a tree in Ward 3 that needs to come down, so let's get that one through quick.
I'm sorry, who, Patrick, you made the motion, and who seconded it?
Where's the tree?
Beckett Street
All in favor?
is way
Aye.
dead.
Opposed? Passes.
And here's the,
It's on city property?
I'm sorry,
Huh?
It's within
can
the,
I see what you have?
Sidewalk area.
Can you replace this with this?
What's wrong
And I
with
have
this?
one for the next one. It doesn't, hers didn't necessarily explain actual specific transfers that had to be done. And I have the same thing for the next one.
Okay.
Here's for the next,
Voted.
this for the next one.
This is for urban and community forestry grant.
This is a in and out, no financial impact.
Like that.
For $1,305,
$1,305
correct. No financial impact.
from the grant going into contracted services. Is there a motion?
Motion.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
I had another transfer.
we already did this one. This was Kristen's, so now we're on the audit services.
There's one more transfer. It was the sewer fund. That's-
Oh, yeah, that's coming up next.
If we can just handle that
Yeah,
now.
we'll handle that now.
Can we do
yeah.
that?
Budgetary transfer to cover the sewer fund costs associated with retroactive pay paid to CSEA and non-aligned employees as previously approved by the common council. What was the one we just did?
That was for the general fund portion of salaries. This is the same concept. This is just for the sewer fund. This is a
Oh.
retro pay for the CSA contract for the sewer fund portion of employees.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion.
Steve?
That would be Patrick.
That was Pat. Motion.
And second? Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we're on the audit.
There's a committee report. We did an RFP for audit services for, make sure I've got it in the right order here, for the city. There were 3 members of the city who evaluated the responses. We've made a recommendation to the city to retain RBT CPAs as the city's auditor. It would be a 2-year contract with the city's option to retain the firm for an additional 3 years. We had eight bidders altogether. We have 3 employees evaluated and scored the 8 proposals, and it was a unanimous decision to retain RBT CPAs as the city's auditor, and they're the current auditor as well.
Have been for how many years?
They've been for 5 years. Part of the proposal is that they would lock in the city's price for the next 5 years with no cost increases. So it would be essentially 10 years at the same price. We were getting some billing for additional services that would be included as part of this proposal. So if anything, it would be a slight cost reduction for the city. And, our experience has been very positive with the firm.
We like that.
So, yeah, the people.
Motion, yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right, Don. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay.
For the common good.
We,
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And let's see, I think that's it under new business. Let's see. Okay, under old business, we already talked about the pipe plan, the city bus merger, the home rule request for the Kingston IDA. You're gonna wait, I understand that better now, but I talked to Kevin about that today, and he's gonna wait till the time.
We're all on board now, right?
Okay,
We gotta wait.
Everybody's on board.
All right.
passing out just a financial report.
Huh?
Just passing out the quick financial report.
And you got a financial report here.
Yeah, I'm passing it around.
Got 2 on.
What am I doing?
It's not a significant update from the last month. We're in a little bit of a holding pattern. Just 2 pages. Well, we got the bulk of the report was emailed to you. Essentially, we're in a holding pattern right now. The numbers are still only through November. The December numbers will be measured internally and reported to the state on May 1st. I can tell you tentatively, it looks like the numbers are shaping up favorable again. It looks like we'll cover the fund balance transfers that came out, and most, if not all, of the appropriated fund balance. So it looks like another positive financial year for the city. But I'll know more definitively when we file the state report in a couple months. So in the meantime, I'm giving you November numbers. Once we do the rollover to the new year, then I'll be able to report on the 2019 numbers. But
It's not going to be like, I remember you said it probably wouldn't be like 2018 numbers.
well, I mean, we've made more. We've made a concerted effort to use some of the monies, some of the fund balance to actually pay down debt, to acquire assets. So no, I wouldn't expect the numbers to be as favorable as they had been, but that's intentional. But overall, the budgetary performance has been good. The insurance lines are within budget. The retirement was within budget. As you saw, as you passed through the retirement transfers we needed, that was previously approved by the council to use up to $700,000 of fund balance to pay off some of the retirement debt. We used.
Do you have any contracts outstanding?
Yeah, we used much less than that full $700,000.
Any contracts outstanding?
Police contracts outstanding. Yeah. So you have the police contract outstanding. I would imagine when that eventually settles, that'll be a draw from fund balance at that time. That's probably the biggest open item at this point. But other than that, everything's been pretty favorable. The sales tax report that you have shows we have one more payment to receive, and we're looking at approximately $400,000 favorable sales tax revenues for 2018. So that's sales tax revenue was strong. Other revenues were strong. Parking revenues were strong. I don't see any. You will see when we're doing the year-end budget transfers, we may have to use some contingency for some of the smaller departments, unless I can find it within other departments, but for some of the regular pay lines, because when we just did the transfers for the CSEA retro, what we didn't do is add money to their budgets for any increases from the date the contract was approved till the end of the year. So the small budgets that don't really have much wiggle room, we may need to use some money there, but it's not going to be substantial at all. But overall, I would expect that the expenditures be significantly less than the budgeted amount. So
Sounds good.
I'll let you know as we get closer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any questions? Looking solid. Anything else?
What, that's
To
not
make another
enough?
motion.
What else you looking for?
That's not enough?
You're all out of emotions, right? The most important motion, when do you make it?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank you.
Second.